Good morning, dear students. Welcome to Iqra English School. I hope you all must be fine. This is your class 5th NCERT EVS book Looking Around, and today we are going to read the chapter number 7, Experiments with Water. So, dear friends, in this chapter we are going to do some experiments with water. In this chapter, we will know why some objects float on the water and why some objects sank in the. So dear students, all this happens because of buoyancy force. What is buoyancy force? Buoyancy is the upward force exerted by a liquid to oppose the weight of an immersed object. So suppose dear students, if you have put any object in the water, then the object will take some place in the water, and the water will come on the both side of this object, and from the water what will happen, the water make a force, makes the force that is exerted to the opposite side of the object, that is called the buoyancy force. So the water will force on this object, and that is why the object will float. Distance, you are watching that one object is floating in the water and one object has been sank in the water. So let's read about this. When weight of an object is more than the buoyancy force, the object will sink. So we can say that this object, the weight of this object was more than the buoyancy force. That is why this object will this object sank, has been sank. And this is the second object. When the buoyant force is more than the weight of an object, the object will float. Here the buoyancy force is more than the object, that is why the thing is floating, the object is floating. Students, let's understand. When the weight of the object will greater than the weight of the displaced water, then the object will sink. Again I want to make you understand, when the weight of an object will more than the weight of the displaced water, then the object will sink. And when the weight of the object will less than weight of the displaced water, then the object will float. When the weight of an object will less than the displaced water, then the object will float. I hope you understand. Let's understand by watching this picture. Floating and sinking of an object also depends on the area of the object. When area of the object is more, buoyant force exerted by the liquid will be more and the object will float. It is said that when the area of the object is more, buoyant force exerted by the liquid will be more and the object will float, like a heavy ship floats. You are watching that the area of the object is more, this ship is very big, and the buoyant force exerted by the liquid will be more. The buoyant force is exerted the more water, and that is why the ship float in the water, float on the water, sorry, the ship float on the water. And why the needle sink? Because the area of the needle is small and weight of the needle is more than the buoyant force exerted by the liquid. That is why the needle sank in the water. Now let's start the chapter. Aisha was waiting for dinner. Today Ammi was making her favorite food, puri and spicy potatoes. Aisha watched as her mother rolled out the puri and put it in the hot oil. She saw that at first the puri sank to the bottom of the pan. As it puffed up, the puri came and started floating on the oil. One puri did not puff up and did not float like the others. On seeing this, Aisha took some dough and rolled it into a ball. She flattened it and put it in a bowl of water. Alas, it sank to the bottom and stayed there. Aisha, there is a girl whose name is Aisha. She was waiting for her dinner because today His mother was making her favorite food, that is puri and spicy potato. Aisha was watching carefully to her mother that her mother rolled out the puri and put it into the oil. She saw that at first the puri sank to the bottom of the pan, but as it puffed up, the puri came up and started floating on the oil. So when she was carefully watching to her mother, she also wanted to do something. She also wanted to do an experiment. Then what did she do? Aisha took some dough and rolled it into a ball. She flattened it and put it in the bowl of water. Alas, it sank to the bottom and stayed there because I have already told you that when the buoyancy force will less than the force of an object, and the force of an object will be more than the buoyancy force, then the object will sink. So let's some question answer. Think what would happen if. So here three questions are there, and I will make you understand all the three question and answer here. Aisha put a puffed puri in a bowl of water. Would it sink or float? So the answer is it would float. If Aisha will put the puffed puri on the water, then the puri will float. You put a steel plate on water. Would it sink or float? What would happen to a spoon? So the answer is if the steel plate is put carefully over the surface of water, it would float. However, the spoon will sink. Why? Because the buoyancy force of the water is less than the force of a spoon. Would the cap of plastic bottle cap sink or float on water? So the answer is it would float. Have you seen that something float on water while of hers sink? Think how this happened. So yes, I think that when water displaced by anything is greater than the weight, it float on the water, otherwise it sank. In the evening, Aisha went for a bath. She had just come out when her mother called Aisha, "You have dropped the soap in the water again. Take it out and put it in the soap case." Aisha was in a hurry and the soap case fell out of her hands. It started floating on the water. Aisha gently put the soap in the soap case. She saw that the case continued to float, even with the soap in it. Have you seen that something float on water while others sink? Think how this happens. The poem here raises such questions. Why? Oh, why? Oh, wooden boat in water will float. Sorry, a wooden boat in water will float, but a needle will sink. Why does this happen? Let me think. An iron ship will also float, though it's much heavier than my boat. But a needle, light as leaf, thin as a pin, will sink right in. Why does this happen? Let me think. So dear students, I have already told you about this, why a heavy ship float on the water, and why the a little and very small needle sink in the water. Do this and find out. Do this experiment in groups of 4 friends. Each group will need a big pot filled with water and the things listed in the table. Put each thing one by one in water and observe. Write your observation in the table given on the next page. But first I want to make you understand something. So this is a question. Have you seen that something float on water while off her sink? Think how this happens. So answer is yes, I think that when water displaced by anything is greater than its weight, it float on water, otherwise it sank. Now find out from the other group which thing float and which sink in the water. So you can answer a football, a piece of a piece of thermocol, etc. float on water, while a cricket ball, a spoon, etc. sink. After doing the experiment, write the iron nail sank in the water, but the katori floated. I think this happened because the weight of the water displaced by the iron was less than it, but the weight of the water displaced by the katori was more than it. Number two, the empty plastic bottle floated on water. The bottle filled with water sank because the weight of the water displaced by the empty plastic bottle was more than its weight. But the weight of the bottle filled with water is more than that of the weight of water displaced by it. Number three, the aluminium foil floated when it was spread out. When pressed tightly into a ball, it sank. This may have happened because the weight of aluminium foil is less than that of water displaced by it, but the weight of aluminium ball is more than that of the water displaced by it. Now, there is an activity. Mark tick for the things that float and mark cross for the things that sink. Things to be put in water. This is the list of the things that are going to put in the water. First is an empty bowl. After putting in 6-7 small pebbles one by one, iron nail or pin, matchstick, empty plastic bottle with its lid closed, bottle half filled with water, bottle full of water, aluminium foil from medicine packing, open and spread up, press tightly into a ball in a cup-like shape, soap cake on a small plastic plate, and a piece of ice. Here you have to write, I guessed before I did. I did it. I saw when I did it. Here, empty bowl or katori. I guessed that it will float. And I saw when I did it, it was floating. After putting in 6-7 small pebbles one by one, I was thinking it will not float, but I saw when I did it, it was floating. Iron nail or pin, I was thinking it would not, and when I did the experiment, it would not floating. Matchstick, I was thinking it will float, and after making experiment, it was floating. I saw that it was floating. Empty plastic bottle with its lid closed, I was thinking it will float, and it was floating after experiment. Bottle half filled with water, I was thinking it will float, and after experiment I saw that it was floating. Bottle full of water, I was thinking it will float, but I saw it was not floating. Here, open and spread out aluminum foil, open and spread out, I was thinking it will float, and it was floating. Pressed tightly into a ball, I was thinking it will float, but it was not floating. In a cup-like shape, I was thinking it will float, and it was floating. In a soap cake, I was thinking it will not float, and the soap was not floating in the water when it was experimented. Soap cake on a small plastic plate, I was thinking it would not float, but it was floating. A piece of ice, I was thinking it will float, and it was floating. So this was the activity. Through this activity, we came to know that how many things or which type of things can float and which type of thing will sink in the water. Find out from the other group which things float and which sank in the water. So I have give you the answer of this question here. Find out from the other group which thing float and which sank in the water. So I have I have given you the answer here. Now, after doing the experiment, fill the blanks. The iron nail sank in the water, but the katori floated. I think this happened because the nail displaced more water, and the katori displaced sorry, the nail displaced less water and the katori displaced more water. The empty plastic bottle floated on the water. The bottle filled with water sank because weight of filled bottle was more than the empty bottle. The aluminum foil floated when it was spread out. When pressed tightly into a ball, it sank. This may have happened because spread out foil displaced more water compared to its weight. Is it magic? When Aisha woke up in the morning, Ammi had fever. Abbu made some tea and went to give medicine to Ammi. He told Aisha, you boil egg, also put some salt in the water. Aisha took water in the boiled egg. Aisha took water in a pot. By mistake, she put too much salt in the water. She saw the egg at the bottom of the pot came up a little and started to float in water. Take some water in the glass, put a lemon in it. Now keep putting salt in the water, half a spoon at a time. Were you able to float your lemon in water? What do you think? The lemon floated in salty water because the answer is here. Yes, the lemon start to float on water. The answer number 2. What do you think? The lemon floated in salty water because after adding salt, water become thicker. This is written here become, BECOME. The water becomes thicker.